So we wanted to answer that question, how we can make the Bay Area a better place with how we can make housing more affordable, and how we can stop evictions in San Francisco.
So San Francisco is a great place where we all want to live. It's got a great economy, it's diverse, education, it's a fun place to be, and people come from all over the world to live here. But there's one problem, the housing crisis. Too many people are being evicted in the city, and we're going to talk about stopping some of those evictions. We plan on changing laws of rent control and the Yellow Sky.
Yeah, so for all of you guys, I'm sure you all know what evictions are, but it's when someone's kicked out of their apartment. And so when you talk about evictions, you really have to think of them in two categories. And so there's the regular eviction, which is maybe the tenant wasn't paying his rents on time, maybe he was doing something illegal in his apartment, being disrespectful, unruly, anything you can think of, and so he got evicted for that reason. However, Morgan and I are talking about the other type of eviction, unjustified ones. And this is just a name put on the desire for money in San Francisco. It's an unfair system, and it's where landlords are evicting their tenants through laws like the Ellis Act and are rising rents until their tenants can't pay that anymore. So these tenants, the citizens, are then evicted and put out of their apartments.
So allow me to briefly explain the Ellis Act. The Ellis Act was a law put into place so that landlords can they evict everyone in their apartment, and then they can stop being landlords and take their building off the rental market, and that allows them to kind of postpone being a landlord or just stop being a landlord. They can do whatever they want with their building after that, and so they evict everyone in their apartment. But the real motive behind most of these, instead of just briefly taking it off the rental market, the real motive behind most Ellis Act evictions is that the landlord is trying to re-rent the apartment for a higher price, because you're not allowed to re-rent the apartment. You're not allowed to re-rent the apartment for a higher price unless you alter the apartment. So what they do is they remodel it and then they re-rent it to someone like a tech worker who's willing to pay a lot more money. And so this is just another reason that landlords are making a lot more money with people who are willing to pay more money.
Yeah, and so rent control, to explain that, rent control is just what it sounds like. It's control for rent, and it's a great system for tenants where landlords can only raise their rent by a certain percentage each year, which is 60% of the inflation rate. So it really helps the tenants. Unfortunately, there's a catch to it. Buildings built after 1979 in San Francisco don't even have rent control, while buildings built before do. So if you're in a building that doesn't have rent control, your price could be one rent and then it could be $1,000 more the next time you have to pay it. And so we even heard of tech workers, like Morgan was saying, they make 2 times more money than regular San Francisco workers, and they even had problems with their rent and had to go to the Housing Rights Committee of San Francisco to solve these problems. And so the fact that they're having problems with rent is showing what these landlords are doing. There was even one example in the Lower Hayden Fillmore area where the landlord said, make $100,000 or leave. And so that's kind of unfair to the tenants because they just have to leave their apartments.
So this is a huge problem, and an example, I'll give an example of a situation. So imagine if you're like a middle-class single guy living by yourself in San Francisco, a studio apartment. You've been living there for 4 years, and you wake up the next morning and there's an eviction notice in the mail. So you now have 30 days to find a new place, or you become homeless. And to make matters worse, there's now an eviction on your record, and so when you're looking to buy another apartment, there might be the eviction might be a turnoff to the landlord, and so they might turn you down because they see the eviction, and so we want to limit that so that the eviction is not a problem.
Yeah, and so, the aftermath is terrible. Like you said, you're now trying to find a place to live, and you're looking for affordable housing. That's what a lot of people are doing. And they get there, and they're like, okay, this isn't as affordable as I thought. You have to earn $60,000 a year to afford it. And the average income in San Francisco is $78,000. So if you're under that average, it's going to take up a lot of your money, or you won't be able to afford it. And the income in San Francisco has increased by 20% in the last year. So it's really a big problem for these tenants. And to learn more about ideas to solve this problem, we went to the Housing Rights Committee of San Francisco, and we went in thinking we would stop these problems at the bill in written law and help them that way. But we interviewed a guy named Tommy who said we should think of the nation's perspective, and he said everyone should have a house and that housing should be a right. And we soon realized that really can't work because there's not enough housing in San Francisco. So we decided to go back at stopping these problems in the written law. And we went to the Housing Rights Committee of San Francisco knowing the perspectives. And we know landlords, they just want to make money, and it's totally reasonable. They're, in fact, when they are taking in new tech workers and evicting, they're actually helping the economy because they're raising the cost of living and raising the economy in general, which is making it a more wealthy place to live, which is just booming the economy here. And so basically what we have to do is we have to choose, okay, do we want to help out the tenants or do we want to help out the landlords? You can only really pick one side, and we decided to help out the tenants because they're getting put in these unfair situations. And so we chose them, and there would only be one way to help both of them out in the same instance, which would be to make more housing, which we can't do. And if we were to make more housing, then we would have more supply of housing, and that would make it so that the rents wouldn't go up as much.
We have some ideas on how to solve this problem. We want to take up a law saying that a building built after 1979 doesn't have rent control. We want to make it so that every building has rent control because every tenant or renter should have the security and safety of knowing that their rent will be the same or maybe a little bit higher every month instead of $2,000 in the next month. And so that just seems like that we want rent control to be all around the city. Also, we want to make it so that the landlord who's evicting a tenant has to file with the rent board. So they must file with the rent board, otherwise they'll be in trouble. And then they have to sign the document with the rent board and then explain the eviction so that maybe a future landlord won't turn the person down if they were evicted with the Ellis Act, so like nothing they did wrong. And we also want the tenant to sign the same document so that it's not the landlord just lying about something. And yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to add more about the Ellis Act, how we would stop that. But in terms of the making rent control law in the city, that is what we want to do. Unfortunately with that, landlords say, okay, so landlords will be like, okay, we don't want to build housing anymore because we know there's rent control everywhere, so they won't have an incentive to make money. And so, like I said earlier, we're choosing the tenant side, and so that's why we want rent control around the city. And with the Ellis Act, right now there is a law that is going through Congress, and it says that a landlord must have owned a building for 5 years before evicting through the Ellis Act. Thanks to my dad, we now know that that literally just got rejected in the paper. We heard that today. So luckily we wanted to change that. So we want to up that to 10 years. So a landlord must have owned a building for 10 years before evicting through the Ellis Act. So that's how we would, so that creates a safer system for the tenant.
So the graph I just put on the screen is it's a histogram of a studio apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment since 2000 to 2012. Now this line goes, so this number has increased exponentially from where it was in 2000, and we think that with some of our ideas backed by the government, we could keep this number here or even down here instead of over there in the future. And so we just want to keep San Francisco a great place for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you.